Welcome to Bible Today study. This time, let's take a look at the Gospel according to Matthew. His Gospel is the first book in the New Testament. Who was Matthew? Matthew was a tax collector, so-called publican, in the town of Capernaum, and he was working for the Roman government at that time. His other name is Levi, son of Alphaeus, which is told us in the Gospel of Mark. Matthew was one of the 12 apostles, so he was very close to Jesus, and he is a very trusted writer because he knew exactly what was happening in a close circle of Jesus. Matthew writes his book as a Jew to choose his friends and colleagues and people of the same nation about a Jew, Jesus. The main message of Matthew is that Jesus Christ is the Israel's promised messianic king. Jesus is the Son of Man. He is the servant of the Lord, son of David. Even the first verse of his book tells us what's the main message he is trying to deliver us. The first verse in the Gospel of Matthew is the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So this is a very strong statement at the beginning and telling that Matthew really believes and his Gospel is that Jesus really is the Christ. He is the promised son of David, the promised messianic king, which is who was prophesied in the Old Testament. Matthew talks about the kingdom of heaven actually in 32 times in his Gospel. Nowhere else can we found this term, the kingdom of heaven. But Matthew uses that all the time. And there are about 130 quotations from the Old Testament in his book. So these figures really tell us that Matthew really likes to connect Jesus, his person, to the Old Testament prophecy. In Matthew there are 4 Gospels, but only in the Gospel of Matthew we can find the dream of Joseph. And this is one story which fulfilled the prophecy in the Old Testament. Angel in this dream tells Joseph that he should marry Maria, because he's going to deliver a king of Israel, Jesus. Matthew tells us about the visit of wise men, flight into Egypt, and about King Herod who kills the children in Bethlehem. They all fulfilled the prophecies of the Old Testament. Only in Matthew can we find the famous Sermon on the Mount. Okay, in the Luke there is some shorter quotations, but only in Matthew we can find the Sermon on the Mount in its length of this amount. That of Judas, dream of wife of Pilate, and mention of other resurrections. All these are found only in Matthew, as well as bribery of the soldiers. So there are some unique text material which Matthew uses. I would conclude my short analysis of the Gospel of Matthew quoting key verses which I think are the most important verses telling us what's the main message of Matthew. First, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered and said, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered and said to him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Another very important key verse at the end of the Gospel is, And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So these both key verses reveal that Jesus really is the Christ, the promised Messiah of Israel. And I think that's the main message of the Gospel of Matthew. And for his message we can trust also today.